Welcome to episode 3192 of Rugby Shoots Itself in the Foot. I'm Tim, and this is Egg Chasers, and this video is bittersweet because on the one hand, have you seen the trailer for season 2 of Full Contact? Very excited. The Six Nations just around the corner, and now we're going to get, just ahead of the Six Nations, a documentary looking back at last year's competition. Awesome, right? I don't know whether you've also noticed that this season 2 has kind of gone under the radar a little bit. There was a lot more fuss over season 1 last year. Why is that? Well, it turns out that could be because this, unless another broadcaster steps into the breach to take on all the costs, this will be the last series. There are no plans for a series 3. Slow hand clap for Rugby. Once again, shooting itself in the foot and messing up a golden opportunity. This was the chance. Do you remember how many people said for the last few years, ever since really like Drive to Survive completely reignited interest and expanded the interest in Formula One, and then there's been other examples since, but so many people said that's what rugby needs to bring it to a wider audience. We need a showcase for the sport and for the characters like that. Well, we got it and we blew it. And there's many reasons for that, which I want to get into on this video. But your thoughts, please, in the comments down below. This was the chance for rugby to showcase the sport, the gladiatorial nature of the sport, how brutal and physical and how brave the people. And I say this for anyone who plays rugby at any level. If you step onto a rugby pitch, you're seriously brave because it is a dangerous sport. And there's been so much apologising for rugby's dangerous nature. No, lean into it, embrace it. That's why people watch. That's why people play. That's what makes rugby special and interesting and different and captivating. Go and get. This was the opportunity to get people so close to the game of rugby that they understood these characters. So close to the game of rugby that you could practically smell the sweat and tiger balm and mud coming off the screen. That's how close rugby had the opportunity to get it. And you know, when you look around, the Formula One season getting underway again, and like I say, Drive to Survive, absolutely perfect example of what great storytelling can do for a sport. Because ultimately, sport is storytelling. And so the people involved in Formula One or whatever the sport may be are characters in this story that's unfolding in front of you. And Drive to Survive does a brilliant job at showcasing the characters, building up the rivalries, telling the story fantastically. But what Drive to Survive has, what Hard Knocks in the NFL has had for years, decades, is complete access to the players. And unfortunately, that's where rugby shot itself in the foot again. And that is the reason why it is being canned. Unless, like I say, someone else steps into the breach, because rugby had this golden opportunity, but instead thought it knew better. And not all the unions were on board and they didn't give access. And as a result, the storytelling was underwhelming. Now, I don't blame the people making Full Contact for that. They did the best job they had with the tools that they were given. The unions need to give their head a wobble. I mean, I really hope that season 2, actually, finally, we get the sort of access that other sports have got and which rugby fans would love to see and which potential new fans of rugby are going to need to get into the sport. It could have been amazing. I mean, when you look at the actual competition, yeah, this is what the makers of Full Contact and what the Six Nations unions have done is the equivalent of Freddie Burns. Remember that game where Bath, he was about to score a match-winning try on home turf against the mighty Toulouse in a Champions Cup game. He was already celebrating as he ran through to the try line, but only forgot that the try's not scored until the ball's down, and Maxime Medard managed to knock it out of his hands at the last minute and Bath go and lose. And absolute joy turns to absolute disaster. Well, the makers of Full Contact, everyone involved in the Six Nations, I think has kind of done that in documentary form. They had a golden opportunity and I think they blew it. I think it's been blown. And when you look at this, we have an example in very, very recent memory, both in 2020 after the 2019 World Cup and last year after the 2023 World Cup, of what can be achieved and what a rugby documentary can do in Chasing the Sun, which was majestic. Not a word I use very often, but I will use it in the case of Chasing the Sun too. It was the best sporting documentary I've ever seen. And I am slightly biased because I love rugby. I think it was amazing because there was complete access. Absolutely amazing. And, you know, some people have said, oh, full contact feels a little bit old fashioned now. Living with Lions was 28 years ago. And that was at the time pioneering. So last year, I think rugby pulled off maybe the greatest documentary, behind the scenes documentary in Chasing the Sun 2. Chasing the Sun was amazing as well, the first one. But also 28 years ago, rugby was the sport that gave the game-changing access. This was the first documentary of its kind, Living with Lions. It was incredible, and it became the blueprint that all those other sports, like the NFL, like Formula One, went on and used. The sort of access where you felt like you were in the room watching everything unfold in front of you. And that's what was missing from Full Contact Series 1. Perfect example, right? So the most consequential thing in the first series of Full Contact was the possible strike by the Welsh rugby players, the argument they were having with their union, all the players potentially going to be out of a job at the end of a season. Many of them were, in fact. And all that uncertainty meant that the players were getting together and were going to strike, and the England game against Wales may not happen. What an unbelievable story, right? And how did we, rugby fans and potential rugby fans, what did we see of that? Absolutely nothing. In massive contrast to Drive to Survive, Hard Knocks, Chasing the Sun, you name it, all the others, we get a picture of team meeting room. We get none of the meeting. We get none of the players talking about it. I understand it's delicate and there's people's jobs and stuff, but this is what you signed up for. And if you want to actually grow the sport, this is what you need to do. We need to be in that room. We need to be seeing everything unfold in real time. And until rugby and the unions give their head a wobble, and some unions were better than others, in fairness. Italy were very open. Scotland were quite open. Ireland were pretty protective, I felt, which was a shame because they won the championship, and I'm sure people would have loved to have seen the winning team. And Wales, for I understand behind the scenes political reasons. And instead of getting the inside action from the meeting room, as the Welsh players decide, are they going to strike or are they going to play against England? Like, huge. We get Warren Gatland chatting with his wife in what is clearly a contrived conversation. Now, I don't think, I've got a background working in TV and radio and stuff, so I kind of understand how these things are made. But I don't think you need to have any sort of expertise in that to realise what happened here. The poor producers of Full Contact are like, we've got to tell the story of the Welsh strike. Yeah, what footage have we got? Nothing. What are we going to do? Can we get Warren Gatland explaining it to his wife? That's what they were left with. That's what we got. Which, I mean, it was basically, when I saw this episode, I was like, I was so deflated. I was so looking forward to Full Contact. I didn't watch the whole series. Someone who loves rugby so much, I've played it all my life. I coach it every week voluntarily, and I have a channel looking at the sport. I did not watch the whole of Series 1 because I got bored because of things like this. I mean, is it any wonder that it's been canned? Like I say, maybe Season 2 will be so good that it will, and the unions will give so much access that Netflix suddenly change their mind and go, oh my God, this is incredible. We have to keep this going. But somehow I fear that that's not going to be the case. Again, compare the access we got in Full Contact to Chasing the Sun, to Living with Lions, where you saw everything, you felt like you were there. And there's been some people saying that, oh, well, the reason Full Contact hasn't worked is because it's talking about last year's competition. That doesn't seem to bother Drive to Survive. They tell the story. So this year, the story will be told of last year's championship. Everyone knows what the results were. It doesn't seem to matter. It's like, if you've got a great movie or a TV show that you love, you'll watch it many times and you know what's going to happen. You don't care because the story's so good, because the characters are so compelling. And that's why I don't buy that argument that it has to be on this year's Six Nations, otherwise it doesn't work. No, although I will say there are examples around the world of places where that does happen. Hard Knocks is a brilliant one. So NFL films are just, they're the market leaders. They are incredible. And it's all in-house. They run it themselves. And they follow the stories in full documentary form, warts and all, every bit of content you can imagine, pre-season training camps, and even they've got one going in season at the minute. As the games are happening, like 10 days after the games have happened, you'll see a documentary on what happened that last couple of weeks. Amazing. So it can be done, but it's hard to pull off, but it's not necessary. But Chasing the Sun 2. Now, if you haven't seen Chasing the Sun or Chasing the Sun 2, please just go and watch them. They're amazing. I did a load of videos when Chasing the Sun 2 was coming out week by week, reviewing the episodes. And as I say, I think it's about as good a sporting storytelling as you're ever going to get. So there's a load of videos in the channel as well, which you should go and check out, my reviews of those episodes. It's absolutely incredible. And I mean, there's so many examples. You see everything. You see, compare the picture of Wales's team meeting room with the fact we're in the changing room after, and this is Bongi and Banambi, I think it's just after the World Cup semi-final, and South Africa are through, so he's relieved, but there's the whole Tom Curry thing bubbling, and he senses that something might be going on there, and he just comes in the dressing room, he's completely on his own, there's a camera there, and he breaks down. Sobs like a child, and Jacques Nienaber comes over and consoles him, like some kind of father and son moment. I mean, how powerful. And we got to sit and watch that. Compare that to the access you get in Full Contact, which is just staged and sanitized and not authentic. This was as real and raw as you can possibly get. And it's amazing. And in the players' most vulnerable moments, in the most important and passionate moments, you see halftime team talks in Rugby World Cup finals. I mean, this stuff is gold. You see the team meetings. Like, you see the coaches sat around going, which player are we going to drop for the World Cup final? And then you see them deliver the team news, and you look at the player's face, Kobus Reinach, wasn't it? As he's told, yeah, you were brilliant in the semi-final. Or have I got that the right way around? Anyway, whichever player it was. Brilliant in the semi-final, but you're not picked. And you see his face as he's told that. You see the team meetings. And, you know, the Six Nations unions are so protective about, oh, we don't want to give any tactics away or anything. South Africa just give it all away. And it hasn't harmed them. Let's be honest. You see all of their thinking. You see Felix Jones. He was an absolute superstar of Chasing the Sun too. Again, I can't recommend watching it enough. He, you see him like no sleep. He's been up all night looking at, going down rabbit holes on the internet, and he finds these videos of the French team, and suddenly he's like, oh, I've just sussed out what they're doing, what this call means, what they're thinking. Oh, brilliant. And then you see them implement a tactic which then works in a quarter final. I mean, this is giving away their kind of secret ingredients in a way. The video game that they use, I bet that was a secret until this series came out. And now other countries will be doing the same. You see everything, tactical analysis, and it's so amazing as a result. And again, just to return to the characters that make the sport what it is, just think back to season 1 of Full Contact. We get Lewis Rees-Zammit sat round the kitchen table at home with his family. Again, clearly a really contrived setup. Yeah, if you sit there, you sit there. Just, why don't you talk about, yeah, have a meal together, yeah, and then, oh, let's get some food in. Okay, cool. Now, why don't you just talk about this and that? Whereas here, it just feels real and raw. You get Kurt Liarenser, you hear his backstory about how he was a butcher in a supermarket in the meat section, just slicing meat. And that's what he thought he was going to do for the rest of his days. He got a chance to play rugby, and he goes back and meets all the people that he used to work with. It's just so powerful and so amazing. And it's exactly what sporting documentaries can be. And it's what Full Contact was not. Now, this is again, the people making Full Contact, it's not on them. And I hope they get more. I hope season 2 gives them more access. I hope all of the unions buy in and go, do you know what? If we want to grow the game, we've got to be a little less precious. We've got to think a little bit bigger, and we've got to buy in. And if they do that, then I think this could be brilliant. And maybe the cancellation of season 3 could be reversed. My fear is that we're going to get more of the same. And the two audiences that you want to try and please are existing rugby fans and potentially new rugby fans. And I think kind of Full Contact, from what I've seen, just hasn't, well, certainly in season 1, didn't do a very good job at getting either. Kind of landed in the middle somewhere. And it was all just a bit meh. So I am disappointed. There's a cancellation of the next series. And I have noticed there's not been a great deal of fanfare about season 2, which makes me wonder Netflix aren't wanting to market it as much because season 1 didn't do very well and they're not that confident of season 2 doing particularly well. Rugby has some bigger problems than this, don't get me wrong. This is just symptomatic of rugby's problems, which is the people running the game need to put aside their own short-term gains and think about a bigger long-term picture. And if they do that, then we'll get great content. We'd have had a video game already. There'd be household names that people know and love, and people could enjoy what's going to be. And this is the frustrating part. The Six Nations competition is amazing. It's the oldest rugby and one of the oldest sporting annual tournaments. In fact, it might even be the oldest annual sporting tournament in the world. And the rivalries, the fans, there's so much to love. And there's so much that I want potential rugby fans to see. But that's where we are. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. How do we solve this? How do we crack this egg? Give the video a thumbs up. Hit subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.